we did maybe one week with the practice of utilizing Zoom via their phone, and then getting onto the Chromebook. Thankfully, I mean, depending on the device, like Chromebooks are much simpler than like a standard Windows PC. So that was a benefit as well. But I think if you have like a solid 2 weeks, that would be ideal.
So 2 weeks at how many hours per day or total instructional hours, do you think?
So our orientation, I think they met 3 or 4 days a week, for just like an hour and a half at a time.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we have that much time. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
I'll ask another question.
Yeah.
And how did you choose which digital literacy skills that you would like to teach or address? Did you go by some kind of list of some skills like North Star digital assessment or anything like that?
So it's interesting. We had different standards that we've used. A lot of we did look at North Star for some of like the basic skills. So a lot of the North Star is a bit advanced for a lot of our students. So it was, really, as I mentioned, kind of really contextualized, just sort of what was our overall lesson aims. So we actually didn't have a major like grounding resource. It happened somewhat organically. Okay, we knew we wanted to use something like Google Classroom, where students would be able to do assignments on Google Forms. They would need to be able to read a comment from the teacher. So a lot of the skills that we developed, it kind of really happened organically. We weren't basing it so much off of like a preset list, and sort of as a result, we ended up kind of making our own.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might have actually stressed teachers out a little bit more if we had like this sort of like list that, all right, you need to like hit all these items in this particular year. Like I think years going forward, it might be a helpful tool, but in the midst of sort of kind of emergency remote learning, it was helpful to do it in this like organic way.
Jamey, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
My name is Penny. I'm out of California, and I was very heartened to see in your presentation your work and its impact on helping your learners help their children. It's long been a soapbox item for me in terms of trying to get our higher administrators to understand the value of adult education, because many of the adult education facilities in California are tied to K-12 districts, and there's other adult education programs in the community college system as non-credit. So I'm curious if that was an intention in doing this project or a happy benefit that you discovered after the fact, because I'd really like to hear more about how you approach that with the powers that be of the value of adult education for your K-12 minis to benefit from their parents having a better understanding of not only English, but of technology.
Yeah, so really the wonderful thing about BRIA, I mean, it's an incredibly unique program. So the school, like we are, as a public charter school tied to DC public schools. But the whole sort of like mission of BRIA is family literacy and that like connection of like parent and child. So really everything BRIA does sort of comes from that place of like a parent is like the child's first teacher. That's sort of the ethos of the school. So all of our decisions are sort of guided by that. So and even like we offer every Wednesday is a child development day. And we actually conducted that in students' first language, so they could, sort of talk about different parenting issues in a Zoom call. And so that's really like a strong focus. Some homework assignments involved like reading with their children and writing reflections on that. So that's sort of really the place that we've always come from, and that's sort of also why we were really interested in finding out that information in our survey. Like how do parents feel, helping their children with remote learning, and those impacts. So that's something that BRIA just sort of has always really invested in, kind of across the board.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in pre-pandemic times, like they would be in the same building, right? Parents would be in their ESOL classroom, and across the way, a child might be in an infant toddler classroom. And then there would be times throughout the day that they would come together.
Jamey, I had a question on the way that you're using GoGuardian.
Yeah.
What, I looked at it. So what product are you using? The monitoring?
So there's several, but we use it's GoGuardian Teacher.
GoGuardian Teacher. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you just explain, like, back up to explain, like, what?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So GoGuardian, it is a monitoring tool. So it has a few different entities. So GoGuardian, like our IT department uses it to sort of check on like just content. So like in like K-12, like they can see, if kids are looking at something inappropriate, or if there's any sort of like keyword searches that might be red flags, like you can get notifications on that. But so IT uses that to some degree. It's as adults, students, it's less worrisome if they're looking up something. But for the teacher view, the original intention is like in the classroom, like I'm at the front and my students are on their laptops and I can see that I want to make everybody's go to this website and I can check that everybody's there. But with GoGuardian, for us, it allowed us to, you can, if a student is on the wrong tab, you can put in a website and send it to them, and that pops up and they're automatically there. If they're on the wrong thing, you can close tabs so they don't see it anymore. You can annotate on their screen. So it's kind of part of the GoGuardian suite, but it's been really like an invaluable tool for us this year.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was thinking about if there were any privacy issues, but understanding it's part of a larger IT system, I can imagine that it was easy enough to roll out or implement.
Yeah, and students, so we developed the technology contract, and students sign at the beginning that I understand that this is like a borrowed device from BRIA. I should not have an expectation of privacy.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from folks?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the next greatest project on the horizon, Jamey? You guys have done such great work now. I'm excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, so right now we are looking at how we're going to really implement our hybrid model. Because students, we want to be able to keep some of the flexibility that we've had this year. So we're looking at doing a couple of days in person and a couple of days virtual. But yeah, like a big focus for me is actually really building out some of this like digital literacy curriculum from the skills checklist that I showed earlier, and separating that out by level, so that teachers will be able to see sort of by level what kind of the expectations are for digital skills, and then they could also see, well, I'm in basic 2, they should be learning these things. In intermediate 1, they're going to learn these other things, and have kind of a scope and sequence for our digital skills. So that's, I think our teachers had to learn so many new things this year that I want to try to hopefully just expand and deepen those things versus throwing a lot of new things at
Not
them.
going to throw them into the fire yet again, right? I
I
do.
know, that's like, sometimes it's like, sorry, here's a new thing that, I think it'd be really
Yeah.
great if you do this.
One of the trends that I've noticed here in California, and the organization I'm with is Outreach and Technical Assistance Network in California, and we do some long-term professional development, which happened to overlap, of course, both the beginning and now the supposed end of the pandemic. And we've had many of our teachers who have stated quite bluntly that they do not want to go back to the face-to-face classroom because they haven't been enabled, empowered. I don't know the correct adjective here, but they are reporting that their relationships with their learners are so much more enriched, powerful, and personal that they are like, I don't get that in a face-to-face classroom. I'd rather do this way. And
so interesting.
I'm still trying to suss out some of the well, is it because you're working harder? And I mean, because our teachers in California are basically paid on an hourly rate that they are in a classroom. And it's been very difficult for administrators to kind of figure out, okay, if you're teaching remotely, I can't pay you for 8 hours a day when I normally only pay you for 3 hours in a classroom. So that's been difficult. But I find it very surprising, this attitude, because it's not just, I don't think it's just a few outliers. I've been hearing those same rumblings, and it kind of lends itself to what Jen said earlier about we saw a huge drop off, or a very large drop off in enrollments and registrations, but the persistence rates are at the same level or higher, which is rather ironic when you think about, we've drugged these students through these chores, some would say tortures, of learning technology and figuring this out and dealing with those frustrations, and yet, by golly, they're sticking with it. And it's beyond the ESOL learner. I mean, we are also seeing it with our high school completion learners and some of our other ABE, ASE learners. But I'm just curious if you've heard that from your teachers of, is it more of a, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get to the classroom? Or is it, this really works well. It works well for the students and it works well for me. I mean, so it's more of a curiosity question.
Yeah. I think the majority of our teachers actually are excited to get back to the classroom. There's while I think there are like some of those elements, like the personal elements. Like I'm a big fan of like project-based learning and students sort of expressing themselves through video and things like that, because you do get things that you may not get in a classroom, particularly for certain students that might be a little more shy to speak, and it can be a little more personal on some levels. But in our experience, I mean, the community sort of aspect of our school is really strong, and you feel that so much in the classroom. I mean, we had so many like celebrations, like countless like baby showers, just so many sort of community events that would take place in the classroom.
And the food.
The food, yes. I mean, I haven't had a pupusa in so long. It's really so so I think actually, it may not be like the norm, but I think for our teachers, like most are pretty excited to get back. I mean, I think the sort of I don't even know. I was going to say work-life balance, but I think some teachers actually prefer the work-life balance of being in person versus the virtual, just because so much prep goes into building things, and for our asynchronous assignments, all the teachers like need to provide, individualized feedback, which is very time consuming. But that's interesting. Like I can imagine many teachers sort of preferring working from home for certain elements, but in terms of like the actual like classroom experience, I would have not guessed that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see kind of how this all plays out over the next year or two, because we do have, I mean, there's a lot of other elements involved with that, including, political in terms of I'm not going back in that classroom until I absolutely know I'm really, really safe. And there's protocols in place for, disinfection and things like that because of the pandemic. But then there's others of just like, I do better working from home. I get more out of my students. I'm disciplined. I am able to separate work and home life. And there's a lot of people that have a hard time with that. When they're at home, they want to do home things, and it may be more difficult to do work things. I mean, so I think all of those areas are very interesting in both the continuation of what's happening with the pandemic, and as we wind down and open up more, what's going to happen within education at all levels, not just adult ed, but at all levels. So thank you for the great information and the wonderful tools. I didn't ask, and I may have missed it in the presentation, but some of those resources and lists that you provided, will those be available? Are you sharing them with your colleagues? Hint.
So yes, actually, I did create sort of a blank version of the digital literacy skills list. So if anyone is interested in that, and that list, I mean, if you like, I mean, I could show some of the different categories if you like. But yeah, like for Zoom, computer, Google, the different skills that we identified this year, that's definitely something that we could share.
Well, if they are, Jeff, when the recording is posted, are those resources generally listed as links, or are they embedded within the recording itself? Because I know you've shown some earlier.
Yeah, a lot of the links that are in the PowerPoint or the slideshow will be in those stay live in the PDF.
Okay.
If you're talking about the ones like in the chat, those will be live in the chat on the Zoom recording as well.
Okay.
So yeah, just as note, Penny, I beat you to the punch because I already asked Jamey that when we, because
I would, Jeff. I would.
We're definitely interested in gathering these resources and pulling them together. Especially since, as he noted, like they created guides in all these different languages.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's been done like over and over and over again, not to the like level of detail and I'm assuming quality of what Jamey and his team have done, since they have instructional designer, as part of that support. But we are going to be thinking about how we can gather all of these different resources that different organizations have created. In some cases, that's perfect and great, good enough for some teachers and some students. Because students want to see their teacher showing how to do something, and that's all well and good. But just knowing that there's been such great, work done by practitioners in creating these support resources for how to use these tools. We want to start gathering those and organizing them in a way that's effective.
Right. Well, I appreciate all of the work, Jamey, and for your entire team. And I'm especially impressed for the charter school aspect of this for a lot of other reasons, but thank you for that. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to pop off, but Jeff, I'll look forward to getting the recording because I'd like to share it with some of our folks here in California.
Great.
Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Penny.
Any other questions as we approach the half-hour mark?
No more questions.
Sue, you do?
No more questions.
Okay. Just to Penny's point about teachers wanting to be home and maybe continuing that, and you talking about sort of how you're pivoting, and your teachers seem to really, because of your community, want to be back home. So that, you know, it seems like so much was retroactive in this past year and designing things to help support students and engaging in this fully remote world. So how are you sort of, and it looks like you also made some clear selections on, we're using Zoom, we're using Google Classroom, we're using Screencastify by Submit, we're for these different points of how teachers engage and provide instruction with students and manage. So how are you going about sort of pivoting back and helping your teachers understand when to use what and how?
Mm-hmm. Like when, so yeah, I mean, so that's an ongoing conversation. But yeah, like we want to, you know, continue building on what we have. Like, you know, we are not going to transition to Google Meet, for example. Like we want to, you know, keep with Zoom. And something that I think is going to be actually a really huge benefit this year is because we'll have some days in person, we can actually do some in-person technology training, because this entire year we've had to teach everything remotely. So being able to actually be in person with the students for some of that, I think is going to be incredibly helpful. So I'm looking at, yeah, how we can sort of balance that technology instruction time in person while still continuing to empower our students, because they accomplish things that you know, we would have maybe taken 6 months in person to teach, but because of the necessity, we got it done, you know, relatively quickly. So that sort of balance, and then also, you know, maybe some sort of like a flipped model where, you know, they're doing some work at home that then can help propel into more of a practice mode once they're in person. So yeah, it's definitely, we're in the process of figuring what all of that is going to look like. But what I don't want to, you know, go back to the way things were before. You know, we want to, like, you know, keep building this. So students will continue to have their own device next year that we're hoping they will be able to take to the school and bring home, which is going to be a big benefit also. So rather than the shared laptops, which, you know, it takes just like 10 minutes for them to actually sign on.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're gonna, you know, just kind of keep moving forward, hopefully just, you know, going, you know, deeper into the skills that the students have already.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you, Jamey, for your presentation and for sharing all of this great work and your expertise and your ideas in the breakout. Thanks to the folks who joined and for your questions, and have a good summer.
Yeah, right. Getting
Breathe, everybody, yeah. Breathe.
Thank you both.
Sherry, I know you're not going
to breathe. Okay.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Okay, enjoy the weekend. Thanks.
Yes, take care.
Thanks, Jamey. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ebony.
Yep, thank you.
We're done in breakout 1. Hey, it's interesting. So I recorded, and this happened last time. Like, I'm wondering do I have to stop my recording before I leave the breakout room?
I don't know.
Well,
but,
we'll see.
It's not.
I know I never got a prompt saying, like, you know, the cloud.
Well, it's still recording now. It's recording now, if you can see.
Yeah,
but it's not.
That's not you, because you would already.
No, it's I think it just carried over. So I guess the answer to that question is yes, because it's.
And we'll leave this in because that's helpful information. Decided to stick through. All right. Have a great weekend, Ebony.
Thanks, you too. Bye.